AMP presents AI, the Tools. This first in our series of panels on artificial intelligence brings product leadership from two leading music technology companies to speak about their innovations in the music production and creation space with AI. Hear from Bill Podolak, Senior Product Manager at Native Instruments, Evan Dhillon, Co-founder and CEO of Kits.AI, Kyle Billings, Product Designer at Kits.AI, Moderator Amy Crawford, ECD at Made Music Studio.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. We're excited to have this conversation today, and hopefully this is a really great learning opportunity, a chance to ask questions, hopefully take away some new understanding of AI tools. This is the first of, I think, several panels that AMP is intending to produce this year. As we see all of this amazing and powerful sort of new technology start to emerge, and understand sort of how do we as music creators, as music producers, understand what's, happening in this world? What are the possibilities, right, and the opportunities with some of the tools that we see in the marketplace, which I think will be a focus of our conversation today. And then down the line, also just start to discuss as an organization, what does this mean for AMP? What are some of the things that we need to be thinking about as, more and more music creators will be experimenting with AI tools in their work moving forward, and just understand sort of how this landscape is shifting. So I'm so excited today to have some amazing experts here with us and some really incredible product leaders. Evan, I'd love to start with you and just, tell us about your journey sort of into curiosity with AI and music creation and sort of what's led you down this path to create Kits.
I've always been a huge music enthusiast my whole life. I won't say that I'm a producer to the same caliber as anyone on the call here today, but always hoped and dreamed to be able to pursue some career path in music and cross that over with my background in technology. I studied software engineering in school. And I had that opportunity with my brother a couple years ago. And at that time, we were building a music creation protocol basically for producers and musicians to sample and remix each other's songs without permission. And over the course of building that tool, I think we made a lot of mistakes and we learned a lot of lessons coming from the outside in. Myself, my brother, we're not creators. So we missed the mark a few times on building tools in a way that really works for musicians and producers and is useful and plugs into their workflows. And so in the beginning of 2023, a year and a half later, we saw all this buzz in the AI world around these AI Drake covers and AI voice broadly. And we thought, I think this is an amazing opportunity for us to try our hand again at, creating a really useful platform for producers and musicians to leverage in this technology in a way that really works. And then also change the narrative around AI voice broadly. When in the beginning of 2023, it was all about exploiting artists and the damage it was doing to brands and reputations. And we thought this tool is a huge unlock for producers creatively and can provide a lot of monetary value to artists as well. So a little bit of a long journey to get into AI, but it's been super exciting since then.
Mm-hmm. So tell me more about when you first saw the fake Drake, tracks come out and like sort of that explosion around there. What was your thought process as you were seeing that, as you're saying, as it relates to kind of creating kits?
So I think if rewinding back to that, I mean, there's so many headlines left and right about the AI Drake covers and all the implications that had for music creation into the future. And it was a lot of fear and, misunderstanding about where things were going. And to us, all of that was very well founded and validated. But at the same time, I think when you see a response like that, it means that the technology involved is extremely powerful and has massive potential for creative unlocks. And it wasn't being used the right way the first time around. And we saw that as an opportunity to put systems in place and really lead the way in terms of bringing this technology to producers in an ethical way. And so that's kind of what we've done over the past year is build out systems for artists to train these models, share them with their fans. And in a few weeks, we'll be launching a voice marketplace that has the right safeguards for artists to do this in a way that is valuable for them, but is also ethical and reasonable. And so, yeah, I'd say our reaction at first was similar to the music industry, like a little bit scared and fearful, but then really excited about passion, making this technology really work for artists and producers.
What excites you specifically about voice, right? Because there's obviously a lot of products out there that are playing with generative music or instrumental compositions. What got you excited about voice in terms of your experience prior or your expertise?
Yeah. Like you mentioned, I mean, there's so many different tools out there in AI music that are in, coming to market, on any given day. We're seeing Suno and Udio making huge waves, but when we were deciding what we wanted to do, we kept coming back to voice for a few reasons. The main one being we had done a lot of work in the sampling and remixing world prior to developing Kits.AI. And where we kind of got things wrong wasn't so much around how do we build a tool that works functionally. It was how do we build systems that work sort of emotionally for artists. And a lot of the problems we were tackling were artists not really feeling comfortable putting their music out there for other people to remix and sample without permission because any track that I put out there as an artist is a part of my identity. And so when we started to see voice tools and AI voice gain notoriety, we actually saw a lot of overlap between voice and what we were doing prior. Voice is a huge part of an artist or a musician's identity, and the idea that an artist might put that into the world for someone else to use without permission and allow someone to repurpose their voice and their brand and their identity in ways that weren't before possible really resonated with us and the kind of work that we were doing prior. And so we actually had a lot of licensing agreements that we built out, some custom novel licenses around sampling and remixing that we were able to repurpose for the sake of sharing voice models in a way that's safe and ethical. So I think it was the identity component of voice and the challenges that presented to us that really made us want to pursue that opportunity.
Bill, I'd love to sort of jump over to you and hear a little bit more about sort of your journey, right? Obviously, a lot of folks that are part of, attending this panel have likely used native instruments or isotope products. I'd love to hear about more of your journey into that and where AI begins to play a role.
My story with I would say the start of my AI journey was I remember very clearly going to the Audio Engineers Society convention in New York City for the first time. And I was there kind of looking for a job. I was a student, and also, so I was like, okay, what's the coolest company here right now? And I remember going to this panel where the chief technology officer at Izotope was talking about this new master assistant that they had just come out with. And this was 2016, 2017. So Ozone 8 and Neutron 2 had just come out. It was the first master assistant, and people were upset, right? People nowadays, it's AI mastering is all over the place. But at the time, it was really kind of novel and disruptive. And he was taking angry questions from the audience. And I remember thinking that is so cool because I am so here for the disruption, and because it was all old guys that were mad at Isotope, and I was like, that is so cool. I want to work on that. And so from there, I interviewed and got a job with Isotope, and it took a couple years, but now I've been in the depths of the master assistant, fine tuning it and really trying to take it to the next level and then take it to the next level again. And just thinking about how can we make this work even better for people? And it's awesome working at Izotope because there are just so many super talented engineers that make this stuff happen. And just being able to work with them and make these awesome tools, because at the end of the day, I just want people to be able to make high quality music, and then be confident about it and release it to the world. So that's been my journey so far, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, one of the things I was thinking about as it relates to Isotope is I think we are familiar with. And again, each generation kind of is experiencing like a new wave of sort of disruption in workflow. But I think about how there's a lot of presets that have been built around, I don't want to say celebrities, right? But like known and respected creators, whether those are mastering engineers or mixers or, the sound of somebody's guitar tone or whatever that case may be. Um, how is that process kind of evolving, with AI, where, for a long time, I think it was, people wanted to hear that. How do I get my mastering to sound like, this person, or this person is partnered with a particular product to kind of give their secret sauce away in a plugin? How do you see that evolving to any degree with AI being part of it now?
Yeah. So the way that Master Assistant works in a nutshell is like we go out and analyze great pop songs. So when Master Assistant thinks your song is a pop song, it will make it sound like the pop songs that we've analyzed. And so you kind of have to take our word for it, where we're like, this is what pop should sound like. This is what rock should sound like. But we know a lot of users are not down for that, right? They want more control. So we added a feature to Ozone where you can import a reference song, and then Ozone will basically sonically match you to that reference song. You could also do multiple reference songs. And then what you could also do, because we know nowadays, like everybody's streaming music and you don't have the files anymore for your reference songs, we built this application that can actually listen to the output of your computer. So you could be streaming Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, whatever. And then with this application called Audio Lens, analyze whatever music you're listening to, and that will create like a target. And then that target will automatically show up in Ozone so that essentially you can sonically match any reference song you want without even needing the file. And so I think that's kind of the future. Like it's taking into account your like listening preferences in order to give you a easier, more mixing and mastering experience.
How do you see your user base evolving, right? As more of these types of tools are being integrated into your products, does that broaden who you see as your audience then with these tools?
Yeah, totally. I think like in general, the trend that we're seeing is that it's from your first day as a music producer, how long does it then take you to make something that is like quote unquote professional quality, right? Like really good sounding. And in general, all of these tools are coming out to shorten that length of time, right? It used to be a really long time. There was like you had to go to a recording studio and get all these uh, players to like play. But now it's like you've got these great virtual instruments. Mixing is getting easier, DAWs are getting easier to use, and like AI mastering is getting easier to use. So we're seeing more new people come in and get like pro quality results faster. But I really don't want to leave the pros behind. And having pros out there advocating for your product means a lot. So at the same time as we're trying to make things easier and bring in these new users, we're treading this balance where we also want to be making cool stuff for pros, so that they stay excited about our products and feel like we're on the cutting edge and making their lives easier. And so it's striking that balance between both ends of the skill spectrum.
Are there conversations that your team has had or considerations in terms of like learning, from like existing music? Obviously, a mix or a master can't really be copywritten, in that same way that like a composition can be. But are there things that you're thinking about in terms of just how this is approached and sort of the material that's, learning um, within the tool?
Like when Master Assistant is trying to make your mix sound like the ideal pop mix. For example, we've analyzed the tonal balance of a bunch of songs, the relative balance of like bass, mid-range, high-end, treble, we'll just analyze the tonal balance of a bunch of great pop songs, average them together, and then that's like the system knows what it's targeting, it knows your tonal balance, and then it'll set up an EQ to get you there. And then what sets Ozone apart is tonal balance is like one property of audio that we can target and like match. But Ozone has a bunch of properties. Loudness is another one. We can measure the LUFS. And that's what most AI mastering systems, to my knowledge, do is like they'll get the tonal balance and the loudness. But then Ozone will also do the stereo width matching, the microdynamics or like punchiness, and then the vocal level as well. It will try and match the balance of music to vocals, and move that closer to a target.
Evan, I'd love to flip back to you and just hear a little bit more about how you collaborate with music creators sort of in your product development. I know that, you talk about the marketplace that's launching and other things. I'd love to hear about, how you're collaborating with artists, for your product.
There are kind of two musician audiences of our product right now. It's the producers using our tool to create synthetic voices and layer in harmonies and vocals and change their own voice to sound closer to an artist for the sake of pitching demos. That's one audience. And then there's also the artists whose voices are being put on the platform themselves. And so I think the latter, how we get our voices and things like that, has become a really important conversation and will continue to be at the forefront of everything we do. When we were first building Kits, there was a couple other AI voice platforms out there in music, and they had some pretty robust libraries, maybe like 30, 40 voices in there. But it was very unclear where those voices came from and how they source those people, and if there were real people behind them, if they're getting paid for it. And so when we were building Kits, we sort of made it a goal for ourselves to be very transparent with all of our data set sourcing and make sure that any of the voices we have on our platform has a real person behind them who's getting compensated as their voice is used. So our first version of that was working with different session vocalists, and we're still doing this today, putting together 30 minutes to an hour of vocal recordings that we then train a voice model on, and we compensate those vocalists for full rights to their data. And that's kind of V1 of our version of sourcing data sets. But in the future, we want to kind of open that up to any musician to be a part of, and also allow musicians to generate not just a one-time lump sum for their voice that they put on our platform, but passive income based on the usage of that voice. So that kind of segues into the marketplace model that we're about to launch in a few weeks, where an artist will record a data set of their voice, they'll train a model on it, they'll then verify that the voice they passed in is actually theirs by reading some real-time prompt. That's really important so that artists aren't, copying someone else's voice. And then once they've made their model, they can share that into our marketplace. And every time a subscriber on our platform uses that voice model, they're going to get paid a fractional payout for that. And so we think that's really where the long-term value is in artists. And we're constantly getting on the phone with artists, talking about their comfort levels with various different monetization methods. We're talking to producers and user research about how they're using the platform and the use cases that we need to provide in our tool to serve them. And so, yeah, I think because the technology is so new, keeping that really close line to both the producers who are using the tool and also the artists who are supplying the voices on the tool is just so paramount to getting this right and making sure that we're building things that work and create value for artists rather than exploit them.
And who do you see, like, who is your core user base now, and who do you see that growing into the future? Because I know, in your bio, right, there's a lot of like kind of high profile investors that are, interested in Kits. How do you see that growing, and who do you see using this, over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer is kind of in progress, really. When we first started, we had some hypotheses, some conviction that AI voice technology would be incredibly useful for musicians. And so we launched our platform and we put some loose music messaging around it. And then we kind of waited and saw what sort of users were attracted to the tool. And early on, it was kind of hard to tell. There was a lot of trendy viral use cases around the tool, some that were lasting, some that weren't. And we did a ton of user research in those first 3 to 6 months with our top users to figure out how are you guys using the tool? What goals do you have when finding an AI voice platform for your needs? And really, what we found was that the people who are coming back to the platform day over day, week over week, were serious musicians and particularly songwriters and producers using the tool to put together demos for artists that they work with. So, if I'm a 50-year-old male, it's pretty hard for me to emulate the timbre and tonality of a young female voice. But with Kits, I can get really, really close to that and put together a demo that is much more compelling than what I would be able to do on my own. So that's an example of a very early use case and an audience that we're serving now. But I think as this technology progresses and the quality becomes better, we're going to start to see a lot more use cases come about and more audiences. We also have a lot of video folks using the tool to do post production for videos that maybe were recorded in a very noisy environment. They can create a voice model of an actor that they work with and then re-record the dialogue using our tool. And so it's been really fun and exciting to see all the different crazy ways people are using it. But I think there'll be a lot more to come as well.
I'd love to jump into some demos and some shares. Bill, would you be willing to go first and just, share a little bit about, what's shaking at Native Instruments and Izotope? And
So what I'm going to start with is our master assistant in Ozone. Some of y'all may be familiar with this, but I'll just share what's kind of in this latest version and show you the results. Let me go back to the default here. So the way this works is it wants me to play the loudest section of the mix. And so I've got a thing ready to go here. It's going to analyze, then it's going to do some decently heavy computation. So I'm probably going to freeze for a second and then I'm going to come back. Here we go. Taking more time. When I'm ready, pushing together. Okay, so you saw it just run through a handful of things, and now let's just I'm going to turn it off and on. So when it's bypassed in black like this, it's off and then it's on. And I'm also using this gain match function to make it so that there's not a big loudness difference. And let's have a listen. I'll start with it off. So hopefully that came through. It's a pretty big difference. A lot more clarity, punch, all of the things you might use to describe audio. It learns the genre, and so we ship these kind of like stock genre presets that, like I mentioned, we went out and analyzed a ton of great songs in each of these genres, and Ozone will basically aim you towards an average of those. We also have these custom targets, so if I wanted, I could match any of these songs that I've analyzed with the Audio Lens application. And like I was mentioning before, there's a handful of things that we think set Ozone apart from the other AI mastering type solutions. One is just the amount of properties that it matches. The way it not only does tonal balance and loudness, like many other AI mastering services will do that. It's doing the width matching. It's doing this punch matching with this module called impact. And it's also rebalancing the vocal. So it determined for pop music, it should really, these vocals should be up by about a decibel. The other things are that there is certain processing within Ozone that is just not available anywhere else. Things like this new clarity module, which you wouldn't quite call this AI, but it is intelligent. It's adaptively contouring this mix towards pink noise, and that has this really awesome clarity effect. Stabilizer is similar. This is like an AI mastering equalizer that knows, oh, you should have a little more bass, a little bit less low mids, and a little bit more top end. And then modules like the maximizer here uh, are really well regarded. They are used on tons of hit records at the top mastering houses in the world. Um, so you don't get that processing with any of the other AI mastering services, and that really sets Ozone apart. In addition to the fact that you have complete control over the results of the AI mastering, right? Because you can come in here and change every little setting and see every little setting that the master assistant has applied. Going back to when I was talking about how we want to be building things for beginners while also not losing the pros. Everybody knows about the AI mastering where you're coming up with the chain, the thing that I just showed you. But in Ozone 11, we added this crazy new AI mastering that uses source separation to let you individually process vocals, drums, or bass within a uh, within a mixed file. So what that means is we could listen to this.
Quick to forget all the things you do.
And the vocal has kind of like a pinched nasally quality. So with the stem focus set to vocals, I can now take this equalizer and EQ just the vocal within this mixed file. So I'll do that right now.
Quick to forget all the things you do. And I don't want to sit around and play mute.
So
But the light in the lobby, beats at the party, soft on your body, let's not be tardy now. And I think your mom might like me too. Oh.
So hopefully you can hear how this bell here is adding a lot more like low mid, chesty kind of warmth to the vocal, and we're taking out some harshness up in the 2 to 4K area. Then it's crazy because you can take any of these modules and apply them just to an isolated stem within the master. So it opens up all of these possibilities for pros who a lot of the time are working with like bad mixes. And there's not a great fix for just a bad mix. But now you have so much more precision with which you can apply this processing. So I'm going to pause Ozone there because I really want to show you this new thing in RX. So I, like I mentioned in my bio, I had the privilege to manage Ozone 10 and 11. And I also had the privilege to manage part of RX 11, which is going to come out this month. And I want to like tease one of the new features. So people who have used RX may have had this experience. RX can sometimes just like save you, like save your ass when you really screwed something up. And that happened to me. I recorded a podcast interview, and I must have laid my cell phone on the interface because this was how the recording came out. Yeah, I totally agree. It's you can think about the macro trend of audio, and RX has this dialogue isolate processing that uses AI to basically determine what is voice and then what is reverb and what is noise. And so with this new module, you can simply say no reverb and no noise and keep the voice the same. And it's got a couple qualities. The best one requires running offline. There's a new real-time one, so you can run this in your DAW. But the best one takes a second to render, so I already prepared it. Let me know if you can hear the difference. Before? Yeah, I totally agree. It's you can think about the macro trend of audio in sort of the digital transformation where you had recording studios full of analog gear and mixing desks, and then that all got digitized. But designers use this thing called skeuomorphic design, where right. So sometimes I do these demos as like mastering demos. It's a little bit subtle, use headphones. This demo is not subtle. This thing saved my butt. We would have had to like redo this whole interview because I ruined my recording. And then this experience of RX saving your butt is pretty compelling and can only be done with AI. So I hope that was a fun, compelling demo. And at 10 minutes, I'll hand it back.
It's funny when you're showing some of the stuff in Ozone, like I think about my experiences like as an artist, making a record and sitting with a mastering engineer, right? And not having the technical language, to talk about like what I needed to feel, right, in that music. And it's just really interesting to see things move that way. And I don't know if, as you think about things you're excited about as these products continue to evolve, right, is even getting to that place where, a songwriter, right, like not a technical engineer, somebody who would probably look at this plugin and like lose their minds, you know what I mean? Making things just really, really friendly for them even to be able to, get a great master, on something that they've recorded.
Yeah, totally.
Kyle and Evan, do you guys want to jump in and share some kits in action?
Yeah, I'm Kyle, so I work on the product team here at Kits. Obviously, Evan has given us a really good overview. Kits develops, a suite of AI tools, and we're just continuously experimenting with new ones. But the one that I'll focus on today is really the core of the platform, which is voice-to-voice conversion. And for context, we're all familiar with kind of the ways that voice conversion has been part of our processes for decades. From vocoders, which let us kind of blend spectral content of a carrier signal with articulation from a modulator, or formant shifting, which kind of lets us play with the characteristics of a voice without changing the pitch. What Kits is working on just goes an order of magnitude beyond this. Kits uses AI to build these extremely intricate, interconnected databases of everything from timbre information to timing and rhythm, dynamics, phonetic combinations, and really anything else that can be learned about a voice these models attempt to do. So when we use these models, they've really learned to understand and replicate the patterns of real singing. So you take an input file and you put it in. It's not just applying new spectral content or shifting formants. It's interpreting what it hears and then creating an entirely new performance in an entirely new voice. So some examples. So I've got an input file here, just a dry female vocal. Easy to love me, still I read. Just want to confirm that the audio did work there. Okay, excellent. So yeah, it's good, strong tone, kind of neutral. I'm going to take this, I'm going to convert it into this breathy male pop voice, transposed down, I think 7 semitones. And here's how that sounds. Easy to love me, still I read. So if anyone's had any experience shifting vocals down, really anything more than like 3 semitones, we know that the formant issues kind of creep up quick. None of those are there. It really does sound natural. You can hear how it introduces that breathiness to it as well. We'll go through some more examples. So here it is transposed up a few semitones and put into this strained male rock voice. Easy to love me, still I read. One of the things I just like about that example is how it creates that fry tone where there definitely wasn't any to begin with, but it really is interpreting that input audio and like creating something in a new voice. And the last one I'll do right here is converting that same input file into a French pop singer voice.
Easy to love me, still I read.
And I just love how it really does capture all the intricacies and like subtle vowel movements that are part of a French accent. It's really cool to see those introduced there. So conversion quality is definitely one thing that we're focused on at Kits, but other than that, it's workflow. We recognize that being able to work into to be a tool that producers use, like it has to be easy to use. So a quick example here is that I can start off in Ableton and I can record my take. I can drag it directly into the Kits desktop app, select a voice. From there, I can transpose it. So here's me dropping in semitones. I have the option to set the strength of the conversion effect and whether to use the dynamics of the input audio or the dynamics of the mononos. I can add some post-processing effects, convert. This process is usually really quick. And then as soon as it's done, I can just drag it right back into my DAW and I'm good to go. So there's a lot of really interesting use cases that Evan mentioned earlier that we see coming out of our user base, but I'm just going to walk through some of them that are really interesting and really exciting. The first is songwriting. So as Evan mentioned, it's really common for songwriters to use these voice models to create more compelling demos. And for those users, Kits has a large library of these royalty-free models. And as Evan mentioned, they're all trained on fully licensed data, and each one of the vocalists that provided this data was compensated for it, and they also have the ability to remove their voice if they ever do want to. And that's obviously for those vocalists who are providing this data. We also want to make sure that for people who are using Kits, they can feel comfortable using these voices in their work because everything's there. It's all licensed. But just as like an example of this, say I want to produce a UK grime track with an artist from London. I really love that UK rap style, but that's just not the voice or accent that I have. That's where Kits comes in. What you're about to hear is me rapping and then my voice converted into this UK rap model.
On a quick flight at the BTZ RSVP'd. I'm a quick type like a GPT.
With my GPU, now they see me too. Catch me with 20, 30 racks in the hot hatch. Cause I maxed out the stacks of the address. Man, they're facing the facts that I made it. My wave is creative, my ways innovative. My pace like a laser. But my movement is smooth like I'm pushing a fader.
Another really cool example of it, just taking my voice and applying that accent to it and making a much more compelling demo. Here's a user example. This is someone who used a bunch of Kits voices to create a full textured choir effect.
And they say violets grow there the whole year round.
Sounds pretty amazing. Another interesting use case is instrumentation. So we've got some users who, previously they would take a Sibelius file and then export everything, throw it into a contact library, and create a demo of their score. But we had a user here who just sang into these instrument models to create this.
Bev.
So another big part of the Kits platform is creating your own voice clones. So all that takes 30 minutes of dry monophonic vocals. So no vocal stacks or reverb or anything. But other than that, you can do any style of processing that you want to replicate. So you can add your own, whatever saturators, compressors you like, whatever's part of your chain, you can throw that on there and it will learn how to replicate that effect. So you can throw an input file in there and just have it sounding like you put your whole effects rack on there. But one of the biggest reasons that people would clone their own voices is for collaboration. So say I work a lot with a songwriter, I can clone my voice and give them access to that voice model. And then we can both be producing demo takes using my voice. So here's me singing a familiar line.
Easy to love me, still I read.
That is what I sound like singing at that pitch. I know I was saying on this call. Another really interesting use case for this, and one that I'm really excited to kind of develop, is With a tool like Auto-Tune, you might have a perfect take in the studio, but if a note is just a bit flat, it can be saved and you can save that perfect take. But just imagine if your perfect take happened in the car and you could save that. So this is me singing an example in my car.
It had to happen to me someday.
You can hear all that rumble, and you can see that it's it's an MP3. You can see that it's noisy, and then here's the upscaled version where I just took this and dropped it into my own voice model.
It had to happen to me someday.
So it just upscales it, kind of puts my effects chain on it. And again, for artists who are really talented singers, it's like such a cool tool. And the last one that I'll share here is kind of one that I'm personally most excited about. And it's a small one, but there's some artists who are out there who are creating voice models in order to translate their music into new languages and to basically engage with different markets. So here's an example of a track that is translated from English into French. Yeah, there really is so much more to come with Kits as a platform, and obviously from the space itself. And I really do feel like the ideas that become features come from discussions like this one. So I'm really happy that we've been a part of it. Really happy to be here and really just in active dialogue about the space and about again just all of this. So thank you so much. That wraps up my demo of Kits.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. We also learned you have pipes in this.
Thank you. Thanks to AI.
That's really amazing. I mean, thank you both for sharing these innovations. I think, maybe we have like our last 10 minutes or so. I'd just love to turn to some of the general questions that kind of came in from folks, in the RSVPs, and maybe just kind of open this up for, all of us to kick around. I think what you guys have both shown us today are really powerful tools that can exist within the workflow of a music creator, really of any skill level, right? Bill, you're talking a lot about thinking about, developing your products with both like the newbie and like the sort of amateur beginner in mind, but also the pro, right? And kind of making those things appealing. And I know that there's a lot of really exciting things, I think, for composers who are creating demos, right? Or thinking about how to show ideas, or like bring concepts to life, with songs or songwriting that I do think Kits presents. Obviously, there's a lot of positive possibilities here. What are some of the things that obviously, there's a lot of other things that are coming out right now, and even in the last 2 weeks, right? We have, and Kyle, you mentioned this, Udio and Suno, kind of making really big waves in terms of sort of generative, sort of text to music tools, that are out there. What are some of the things that you might say or kind of share, for those artists or creators who are concerned at this moment, right? And kind of looking at this as a crossroads in terms of, where do my skills, what do I do with my skills at this very moment as we're seeing all this innovation happening?
I'll jump in on this one. The way I break it up in my head is there's kind of two categories of tools. The ones that are sort of democratizing music creation, making it a lot more accessible for folks, which are Sudo and Udio and others. And there's also AI tools coming out. I think both of us fall into that category, Native Instruments and Kits, that are helping producers kind of realize the audio, the creative ideas in their head and bring those to life in ways that weren't before possible. And I think the latter it's very clear how those are creative assistants and don't really replace entire creative functions or anything. And the former being those tools that make creation more accessible. I don't believe at this time that those are going to replace the human emotion and nature of music creation. And I think it's important that whether it's a creative tool that just helps musicians or it's a end-to-end music creation tool in its entirety, that whatever it's being based on and learning from, it has the rights to and is licensed. And everything is being funneled back to creating more value for artists instead of less. So I'm optimistic for the future in that these tools will really create a bigger pie for all artists generally and help folks rather than exploit them.
Bill or Kyle, anything to add there?
I'm reminded of a pretty good metaphor I heard once, where it's kind of like the cars with like a manual transmission or an automatic transmission. Like when you're driving to the grocery store or you're commuting to work, you want an automatic transmission because you just want to like get to work. But if you're driving your sports car like through the canyons or like along the beach or something, you want to like drive the car and you want to feel that a little bit more. Um, and so I think there are those kind of cases in audio. Like if you're a producer and you produce a song and you just want something that you can put on your USB stick and like go play at a show, you're gonna like AI master it. But if you're like, oh crap, you have all this analog gear and you like want to have the like manual experience of mastering, then you're gonna do it that way. And with like new websites like that will just make the whole song for you, like how many people really want it to be that automatic? I'm not sure. Like it's definitely super impressive what those things are pulling off. And I've seen like a more manual thing where creators will like go and prompt it and kind of see what they get and then take that and like work with it. And like that's cool too. I just think we have this like intrinsic desire to kind of create. If you're doing it, you have that intrinsic desire. And so it's not like something that's completely automatic and making a whole song for you is all of a sudden gonna like take that away.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the questions that we got, I think was kind of getting at that sort of like what aspects of an idea, right, do you use AI for versus where do you draw on like your human creativity and your human skills?
Yeah, probably not. I think it's like people will choose what parts of music creation they want to like get good at. Like for me, I'm not a big like sound designer. So when I'm producing, it's like I'll use a lot of Splice, right? And I don't mind, I don't think it's cheating to like use Splice loops. Um, but for some people, it's like they want to get into every parameter of the synthesizer and like craft their own thing. So it's just like different strokes for different folks, I think.
It's interesting because you mentioned Splice. I had actually seen a talk from some folks from Sony CSL, which is like a lab in French lab that's doing a lot of work with AI and partnering with music creators and producers to build tools. They said, we're not as excited about like a text to music tool that anyone can use. We want to create tools that music creators actually feel inspired by and want to use. And one of the things they were talking about is like if you think about Splice or some of these other products that are out there where you can pull audio files and some people are taking those and manipulating them and making a composition that's has a unique point of view. Other people could just be pulling loops and layering things together and maybe not deconstructing those elements as much. And their take was that AI is potentially more creative than that, where people might be dragging and dropping sort of prefabricated audio elements to create a composition, as opposed to if you can have more flexibility and ability to kind of customize the inputs to something as a music creator, which I thought was kind of an interesting take on, where they felt that, AI could start to elevate as compared to, like a product like Splice that's out there was just sort of everybody has the same starting point in terms of a collection of audio files. I see Brian asked, maybe I missed this, but is the vocal track that's created generated 100% owned by the user? Evan, I see that you've answered there saying that's 100% royalty free and unrestricted for commercial use. Do some artists in the library have different terms for using their voice, or is that the same across the whole catalog of voices?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've tried a few different things in this realm. Obviously, we have all of our royalty-free voices, which are the ones that we've acquired from session vocalists and have acquired the rights to, and those are all 100% royalty-free. Everything you see there, you can use without restriction. We ran a few experiments early on where we put basically an approval restriction in place for artist voices, which meant that for a track that used a voice to be released commercially, the artist whose voice it was had to approve it for commercial release. And that artist, when the track was put out, also was entitled to a certain percentage of splits on the derivative work. And so we're constantly kind of working with artists, trying new things, seeing what's working. And there are some things that were very exciting about that model. I think it spoke to a level of comfort that, eased a lot of concerns for artists. Because the idea of putting an artist's voice into a library without any restriction is pretty radical, and it's not going to be for everyone. And so I think there'll be some pretty novel models that use some sort of artist approval process and some kind of splits on the derivative work that allow for artists of any comfort level to share their voices. But for the time being, we really want to stick to this producer-centric, royalty-free model, and then kind of build and learn from there.
I did see one other question, and Bill, you've already answered it. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, as you're talking about, Neutron and Nectar and some of the tools for mixing that also exist sort of within the Izotope suite.
Yeah, I could have gone on and on with the demo because we have a lot of cool products. We have, in the same way, AI mastering, we have AI mixing and AI vocal mixing. So those are worth checking out. We have like 10-day free trials, and we also have these elements versions of the products that are pretty cheap, and you get like the full assistant experience. So it could be worth a shot.
Well, I think we're good to wrap up here. I'll just ask one more question because I like to end this conversation on an optimistic note. What are you all most excited about for the future as this technology is evolving?
I guess the way that I'm seeing the AI space is as its productivity. And kind of the fun question to ask myself is productivity in what way? Is it productivity in terms of just being extremely prolific or being really fast? Finding ways to make that work. But then obviously the follow up there is like, what is the goal? And I like the idea of being able to be more productive to save time in order to have time to take more risks. I'm just curious to see in what ways I'll be able to focus the time that I do have to make music on different things that maybe I was spending on like putting the 1176 before or after the LA2A. And like those are things that I have fun with, but what might I do next? And I'm also really excited to see, in the same way that auto tune was, a utility, but then became this kind of creative tool. In what ways is this next generation going to take these tools and break them and create sounds that could not have been made any other way? And I think that's going to be at least a component of the movement that happens as a result of all of this.
I think Kyle's latter half of that answer is really what resonates with me, which is just all of the new sounds and genres that could spawn out of technology like this, whether it's AI voice or generative music or whatever it is. I think, we're at another kind of step function increase in the kind of tooling that's available to artists in a similar way that the sampler kind of opened up all these different new sounds and genres that were built on that technology. I think whether it's voice or other things, there's going to be a lot of new genres emerging, and, keeping a very close pulse on our more experimental users of the platform to see what those may be in months and years to come.
Kyle and Evan, I was totally resonating with both of those. Because I think a lot about the balance between the beginner and the advanced user. So like on the beginner side, I love the idea of just more people being able to express themselves musically. And like, I feel like there's this hump in music production where you start and you're bad because you're a beginner, and you're bad because you have like good taste and you can just compare your stuff with artists. So the fact that hump is like flattening and people can get to great quality results really quickly, and all the music that'll come out that we'll never hear but sounds better because Ozone helped it sound better and gave that creator the confidence to go ahead and release it. But I also what really gets me out of bed is helping the pros work on like high profile records, and having some small part in the production of these like super big pop songs that the world is going to listen to. So I had an experience with the development of RX11, which I wish I could give more detail on, but I'm going to have to kind of obfuscate and like tease it a little bit. But in the process of developing it, I got connected with this top tier mastering engineer who was really excited about some of the new tools we were building. Not the one I showed you, it's something else that has yet to be announced. And so I got him signed up as a beta tester, and we were texting back and forth. And he told me, I'm working on the highest profile album of my career right now. And he's so excited about these new tools that he put them to use on this super high profile album. And that's going to come out in May. And the timing was so good, and he was so excited. He actually agreed to do a video with us talking about that process. So I wish I could say who the artist was, because it's a big one. But keep an eye out for that video and for RX11. And I'm really excited for more moments like that and helping the pros elevate their craft even more.
It's May, so we'll find out in just a few weeks. We'll keep our ears open for that. Thank you. Bill, Kyle, Evan, thank you so much for sharing this information with our membership today. Thank you so much for sharing these demos. I think it's really important, for us to have these conversations and just sort of hear all these different points of view and learn about what's being built. And like I said, what we can all be optimistic for in the future as people that love music, love creating music, and also are just amazing innovators. So thank you so much. Thank you, AMP folks, for joining. And stay tuned for the next one in this series, hopefully sometime this summer.